Today, we're going to break down one of the most critical arguments in all of early Christian history. We're talking about the Apostle Paul's defense of the resurrection. We're going to look at not just what he said in his letter to the church in Corinth, but why it was such a huge deal. So important that, honestly, Christianity as we know it might not even exist without it. So let's dive right in.
Pretty much every movement, every belief system eventually faces that moment of crisis from the inside. It's that turning point that can either make it stronger or just tear it apart completely. And for the early church, that crisis was brewing in the ancient city of Corinth, where one of their most fundamental beliefs was starting to crack.
So, what was the problem? Well, it was this really dangerous drift in their thinking. Inside the Corinthian church itself, some of the members were actually starting to deny a core non-negotiable part of their faith, the resurrection of the dead. Paul just tackles this head on. He's not just reacting to a rumor. He's gotten a direct report about this. And you can just feel the urgency in his words, because he knows this isn't some minor disagreement you can just debate over coffee. This is a crack in the very foundation.
He sees this denial as like the one thread that if you pull it, the entire fabric of the Christian faith just completely unravels. For Paul, absolutely everything, all the hope, all the meaning, the whole message, it's all built on the resurrection being real. If you lose that, you lose the whole shebang.
So how does he push back? Well, what's so fascinating is that he doesn't open up with some complex philosophical debate. He starts out more like a historian or maybe even a lawyer, methodically laying down a foundation of what he presents as solid, verifiable facts. He kicks things off with what's known as the kerygma, which is really just the core, essential message of the church. And notice his wording here. He says he received this message. He's making it crystal clear that he didn't make this up. He's just one link in a chain, passing on this established authoritative tradition that was the bedrock of the church way before any of the Gospels were even written down. And then he builds his case by listing eyewitnesses, almost like a prosecutor in court. He's basically saying, look, this isn't a myth, it's a real historical event, and there are people still alive who saw it. Go ask them. He even points to this group of over 500 people and notes that most of them were still around when he was writing. He's grounding this belief in public, verifiable testimony. So after laying out all his evidence, Paul just completely shifts gears. He launches into this brilliant, logical argument. It's like he's saying, okay, let's play this out for a second. Let's imagine you're right. And then he walks them through the absolutely devastating conclusions of that idea. He starts with their basic idea. All right, let's just assume you're right and there is no resurrection of the dead. What happens next? And boom, the first domino falls. If resurrection is impossible for people in general, then it had to have been impossible for the man Jesus too. Simple as that. And if Christ wasn't raised, well then what are we even doing? That whole core message we've been proclaiming, the kerygma we just talked about, it's all of a sudden completely empty. It's just a story with no power, a promise that isn't true. And right here is where it gets deeply personal for them. Because if the preaching is useless, then the faith they built on that preaching is also totally useless. The entire foundation of their belief system just crumbles. This leads to Paul's most devastating conclusion. Talk about an existential crisis. He lands on this idea that if all their hope, all their sacrifice, is just for a better life now, with no ultimate victory over death, then Christians aren't admirable people. They're fools. They are, in his own words, most to be pitied for betting their entire lives on a lie. But Paul knows what they're probably thinking next. It's not just if the dead are raised, but how. The Corinthians were practical, and they were really struggling with the mechanics of it all. What would a resurrected body even be like? You have to remember, for a lot of people in the ancient world, especially with Greek ideas floating around, the physical body was kind of seen as a prison for the soul. The idea that a body decays and turns to dust could somehow be brought back, that was a huge mental block for them. It just didn't compute. And Paul's response here is just genius. Instead of getting into some dense, complicated philosophy, he pivots to an analogy that everyone in that society would immediately understand, a simple seed. And this analogy is just so powerful. A seed gets planted, or sown, and it has to die, right? It disintegrates in the ground to make way for the plant. Now, the plant that grows is obviously connected to that seed, but it's a totally different, way more glorious form. Paul applies this directly. Our current body is like the seed. It's perishable, it's weak, but the resurrected body, that's the plant, imperishable, raised in power. It's not just fixing up an old corpse, it's a complete transformation into a brand new kind of existence.
So, all of this builds to the grand finale of Paul's argument. He takes every one of these threads and weaves them together to explain not only this ultimate transformation, but also what this incredible hope means for living your life right now.
He describes this transformation as a mystery, not a puzzle to solve, but a sacred truth that's now being revealed. And it's not going to be a slow, drawn-out process. It'll be sudden, a massive, climactic event. In a flash, he says, in the twinkling of an eye, the mortal will become immortal. And this leads to that triumphant climax of the whole chapter. With the certainty of resurrection, death itself is dethroned. It's no longer the final winner. It gets reframed as this conquered enemy whose ultimate power has been completely shattered.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. Paul's whole argument isn't just about theology for its own sake, it's incredibly practical. He's arguing that believing in a future resurrection is the very engine that gives meaning to their lives today. It's what makes their work, their sacrifices, their entire lives not a waste in the end.
And that really leaves us with a bigger question, doesn't it? Beyond just this one letter, it forces us to think about how any belief about the end, about what happens after everything, profoundly shapes the values, the choices, and the meaning we build for our lives right here and now.